Good morning, Bitcoin. Today is Saturday, May 30th, 2020. My name is Thomas Hunt, and this is the World Crypto Network. The price of Bitcoin is up 1.22% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 9,552, a high of 9,612, and a low of 9,323. That's $1 for 10,468 Satoshis. Volume is a little low as it is a Saturday, with 3,139 Bitcoins changing hands. The market continues to lean margin long, with 82% now reporting that direction. Let us be lovers and marry our fortunes together. I've got some real estate here in my bag. So we bought a pack of cigarettes and Mrs. Wagner's pies and walked off to look for America. Kathy, I said, as we boarded a Greyhound in Pittsburgh, Michigan seems like a dream to me now. It took me 4 days to hitchhike from Saginaw, but I've come to look for America. Laughing on the bus, playing games with the faces. She said the man in the gabardine suit was a spy. I said, be careful. His bow tie is really a camera. Toss me a cigarette. I think there's one in my raincoat. We smoked the last one an hour ago. So I looked at the scenery, and she read her magazine, and the moon rose over an open field. Kathy, I'm lost, I said, though I knew she was sleeping. I'm empty and aching, and I don't know why. Counting the cars on the New Jersey Turnpike, they've all come to look for America. They've all come to look for America. When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I'm on your side. Oh, when times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. When you're down and out, when you're on the street, when evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. I'll take your part. Oh, when darkness comes and pain is all around, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. Sail on, silver girl, sail on by. Your time has come to shine. All your dreams are on their way. See how they shine. Oh, if you need a friend, I'm sailing right behind. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will ease your mind. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will ease your mind. This is Eugene V. Debs, a statement to the court. Upon being convicted of violating the Sedition Act, this is first delivered September 18th, 1918. September 18th, 1918. Your Honor, years ago, I recognized my kinship with all living beings and I made up my mind that I was not one bit better than the meanest on earth. I said then, and I say now, that while there is a lower class, I am in it, and while there is a criminal element, I am of it, and while there is a soul in prison, I am not free. I listened to all that was said in this court in support and justification of this prosecution, but my mind remains unchained. I look upon the espionage law as a despotic enactment in flagrant conflict with democratic principles and with the spirit of free institutions. Your Honor, I have stated in this court that I am opposed to the social system in which we live, that I believe a fundamental change, but, if possible, by peaceful and orderly means. Standing here this morning, I recall my boyhood. At 14, I went to work in a railroad shop. At 16, I was firing a freight engine on a railroad. I remember all the hardships and privations of that earlier day, and from that time until now, my heart has been with the working class. I could have been in Congress long ago. I have preferred to go to prison. I am thinking this morning of the men in the mills and in the factories, of the men in the mines and on the railroads. I am thinking of the women for who a paltry wage are compelled to work out their barren lives, of the little children who in this system are robbed of their childhood and in their tender years are seized in the remorseless grasp of mammon and forced into the industrial dungeons, there to feed the monster machines while they themselves are being starved and stunted, body and soul. I see them dwarfed and diseased and their little lives broken and blasted because in this high noon of Christian civilization, money is still so much more important than the flesh and blood of childhood. In the very truth, gold is God today and rules with pitiless sway in the affairs of men. In this country, the most favored beneath the bending skies, we have vast areas of the richest and most fertile soil, material resources in inexhaustible abundance, the most marvelous productive machinery on earth, and millions of eager workers ready to apply their labor to that machinery to produce in abundance for every man, woman, and child. And if there is still vast numbers of our people who are the victims of poverty and whose lives are an unceasing struggle all the way from youth to old age until at last death comes to their rescue and lulls these hapless victims to dreamless sleep, it is not the fault of the Almighty. It cannot be charged to nature, but it is due entirely to the outgrown social system in which we live that ought to be abolished not only in the interest of the toiling masses, but in the higher interests of all humanity. I believe, Your Honor, in common with all socialists, that this nation ought to own and control its own industries. I believe, as socialists do, that all things are jointly needed and used ought to be jointly owned, that industry, the basis of our social life, instead of being the private property of a few and operated for their enrichment, ought to be the common property of all, democratically administered in the interest of all. I am opposing a social order in which it is possible for one man who does absolutely nothing that is useful to amass a fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars, while millions of men and women who work all the days of their lives secure barely enough for a wretched existence. This order of things cannot always endure. I have registered my protest against it. I recognize the feebleness of my effort, but fortunately, I am not alone. There are multiplied thousands of others who, like myself, have come to realize that before we may truly enjoy the blessings of civilized life, we must reorganize society upon a mutual and cooperative basis. And to this end, we have organized a great economic and political movement that spreads over the face of all the earth. There are today upwards of 60 millions of socialists, loyal, devoted adherents to this cause, regardless of nationality, race, creed, color, or sex. They are all making common cause. They are spreading with tireless energy the propaganda of the new social order. They are waiting, watching, and working, hopefully through all the hours of the day and the night. They are still in a minority, but they have learned how to be patient and how to bide their time. They feel, they know, indeed, that the time is coming in spite of all opposition, all persecution, when this emancipating gospel will be spread among all the peoples, and when this minority will become the triumphant majority and, sweeping into power, inaugurate the greatest social and economic change in history. In that day we shall have the universal commonwealth, the harmonious cooperation of every nation with every other nation on earth. Your Honor, I ask no mercy, and I plead for no immunity. I realize that finally the right must prevail. I never so clearly comprehended as now the great struggles between the powers of greed and exploitation on the one hand, and upon the other, the rising hosts of industrial freedom and social justice. I can see the dawn of the better day for humanity. The people are awakening. In due time they will and must come to their own. When the mariner, sailing over tropic seas, looks for relief from his weary watch, he turns his eyes towards the Southern Cross, burning luridly above the tempest-vexed ocean. As the midnight approaches, the Southern Cross begins to bend. The whirling worlds change their places, and with starry finger points, the Almighty marks the passage of time upon the dial of the universe. And though no bell may beat the glad tidings, the lookout knows that the midnight is passing, and that relief and rest are close at hand. Let the people everywhere take heart of hope, for the cross is bending, the midnight is passing, and joy cometh with the morning. (1812). Some of the invaders now closed in on the 67-foot-high twin buildings of the Capitol, the Senate on the north, and the newer House on the south. The central part of the Capitol was not built. The two wings were linked by a covered 100-foot-long wooden walkway. Other invading troops marched south to burn more of the Navy Yard, already roaring with flames set preemptively by Americans, hoping to deny the British supplies and naval vessels. When the British entered the halls of the House and the Senate, they passed through monumental interiors of stone adorned with fluted columns and arched entrances below domed vestibules. They raced up grand staircases into ornate rooms with vaulted ceilings. One young officer, expecting to find Republican simplicity, was astonished by evidence all around him of monarchical splendor. The foreigners were so awed by the grandeur of the buildings that a number of junior officers were dismayed by the order to set it all on fire. The architect in charge for the past decade, English-born Benjamin Henry Latrobe, had supervised with a perfectionist rigor as he created a national capital that, in its formidable beauty, could compare with so many of its counterparts across the sea. There were no sculptors of note in the young republic, so Latrobe had looked to the land Michelangelo and Donatello, of Leonardo and Cellini, and after he found two worthy Tuscans, he hired them. Giovanni Andrea had worked too slowly for the impatient Latrobe, but when he finished the fist of his columns, the architect had rejoiced at this artist of first-rate excellence. Latrobe had commissioned from the other Tuscan, Giuseppe Franzoni, a grand American eagle with a wingspan of more than 12 feet. When it was complete, Latrobe declared it was the finest eagle in the entire history of sculpture. It hung high above the Speaker's chair, facing the British invaders when they entered the House of Representatives. The colossal eagle suffered the same fate as the capital's other glorious works of art when the Vandals lit bonfires made from piles of furniture spread with the combustible content of Congreve rockets. The heat was so fierce that glass oil-burning lamps and 100 panes of English plate glass skylights melted into the sizzling debris. Sheets of flame created such heat that the outer stone of the columns expanded and fell off, leaving the deformed shafts wobbly and grotesque. The heavily timbered Library of Congress, stacked with about 3,000 volumes of rare books, burned to oblivion. The 86-foot-long room had a 36-foot flat ceiling, which, if vaulted, might have served as a fire break. There was something incongruous about the devastation and havoc behind them and the quiet ahead, as 100 British troops advanced silently in 2 orderly columns down Pennsylvania Avenue, between double rows of stately Lombardy poplar trees. Slaves raced ahead, warning residents to escape while they could, as the invaders were on their way to burn the president's house and flanking government offices. Along the route, just over a mile long, the British commanders stopped several times to assure anxious residents that their lives and private property would safe so long as they did not take up arms against the occupying forces. These were no glib promises made on the spur of the moment. General Ross even detailed a Scottish officer, Major Norman Pringle, to command a company specifically to protect private property along Pennsylvania Avenue. They would perform so honorably that Americans would remember them respectfully for years afterward. Now, within a few hundred yards of the president's house, the occupation forces were approaching from the opposite direction to that taken by a procession of dignitaries led by Freemasons in hierarchical order who had taken part in the ceremony which the cornerstone had been laid 22 years earlier. At least one American accompanied the British soldiers and sailors into the president's house. Roger Chew Waitman, a young bookseller recently married, was made to accompany the invaders into the mansion where Admiral George Cockburn teased him with mischievous relish. When Cockburn told him to select a memento of the visit, Waitman chose an item of value only to be told by the Admiral that everything of value would be destroyed, and that he must instead select a worthless souvenir. The Vandals were tired, thirsty, and famished. It was almost midnight and the end of an exhausting day that had begun with a 7-hour forced march from near Upper Marlborough through miles of woods, thickets, and brush until they reached Bladensburg, where they had fought a running battle with Americans in heat so fierce that 18 invaders dropped dead from exhaustion. And then they had marched another 6 miles to Washington. Now that they were inside the president's house, they feasted inelegantly on food and wine, prepared for a table of 40 military and cabinet officers expected for dinner by Dolly Madison. One of the Britons toasted the health of their Prince Regent. Another raised his glass to the success of His Majesty's land and naval forces. Then they drank to peace with America and down with Madison. Someone had found one of James Madison's tri-cornered hats, and raising it by the tip of his bayonet, declared that if they could not capture the little president, they would parade his hat in England. Sailors hurried up the stairs and into the more numerous rooms above, where they snatched souvenirs and clothing. But already there were signs of looting by local thieves who had broken in earlier. Drawers were open and their contents strewn about haphazardly. Whatever was not carried off by the British would perish in the fire. Only 2 objects of art that were in the president's house before the conflagration of August 1814 remain in the White House today. One is Gilbert Stuart's full-length portrait of George Washington, which now hangs in the East Room. The other is a small wooden medicine chest in the downstairs map room. Both were taken out of the mansion in dramatic circumstances, before the British burned the building. Dolly Madison, one of the most beloved women to ever occupy the White House, had displayed a courage rare among Washington's residents. She had stayed on in the president's house even after her guard of 100 military men had fled. The president's wife refused to be rushed, even after a horseman galloped down Pennsylvania Avenue, warning all to flee because the British Army had routed American forces at Bladensburg, about 6 miles northeast of Washington. She insisted on staying to save the portrait of the first president, which then hung on the west wall of the large dining room. It had been acquired by the federal government as a state portrait for the president's house in 1800 at a cost of $800. At this calamitous moment, 2 New Yorkers entered the room and asked if there was anything they could do to help. One of the men, a ship owner named Jacob Barker, was a close friend of the Madisons and, like Dolly, a Quaker. His companion was Robert de Pestier. "Save that picture, if possible," cried Dolly Madison. "Under no circumstances allow it to fall into the hands of the British." When she saw that her slave, Paul Jennings, and another servant were taking too long to unscrew the giant frame from the wall, she told them to break the wood and take out the linen canvas. At that moment, French John entered the room, and seeing the potential for irreparable damage to the painting, ordered Jennings to stop. According to traditional accounts, with Dolly's approval, he took out a penknife and cut the heavyweight English twill fabric from its frame. French John gave the canvas to Barker, who started to roll it up until he stopped by the Frenchman for fear that the paint would crack. Barker and de Pestier then escorted the portrait in a wagon through Georgetown into the countryside, where they left with a farmer they lodged with overnight. A few weeks later, Barker retrieved it and gave it back to Dolly Madison. The medicine chest, small enough to be carried off in one hand, was returned to the White House 125 years later, in 1939, by Archibald Keynes, a Canadian who wrote a cover letter to Franklin Delano Roosevelt saying that it was looted or pillaged from the White House by my grandfather, who was a paymaster of the Devastation, one of the boats that sailed up the Potsdam at that time. I hope you will find it an appropriate resting place for this little relic, and should be very pleased if you gave it shelter in your own home. More about looting. After a day and night of torching nearly all the public buildings and even a few private businesses, including rope walks, which sent billowing clouds of choking black smoke over the Capitol, the British withdrew to their ships, afraid that their path of retreat might be blocked by American troops. The occupation of Washington by British troops lasted about 26 hours, but evidence of their vandalism survives to this day. Some of the blocks of Virginia sandstone that make up the original walls of the White House are clearly defaced with black scorch marks. They are indelible stains from the fires of 1814. All right, let's do the Bitcoin news first. The price of Bitcoin was up 1.25% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 9,548, a high of 9,612, and a low of 9,323. That's $1 for 10,472 Satoshis. Is Bitcoin price finally ready for a breakout above 10,000? Maybe. Bitcoin Google interest mimics 10K price run as halving hype fades. Search patterns head lower, indicating that the halving is no longer driving interest in Bitcoin as price action centers on 9,500. A wet season in Szechuan normally leads to a spike in Bitcoin's hash rate. Will the same happen this year? Oh, here we go. The rain in Sichuan is a good sign for all local farmers, Bitcoin miners included. The abundance of water leads to a hydropower supply glut, which in turn makes electricity prices, miners' main burden, decrease. As a result, mining becomes increasingly profitable, which can lead to an increase in the overall hash rate. But is it possible for a single Chinese province to drive up the entire Bitcoin network amid slashed reserves slash rewards? Maybe. The worst crisis in a century is setting the stage for Bitcoin. And it's all about the price, the price, the price, the price, the price. I like this one here from Forbes. This story was from 2014 about the internet creator, obscure mathematician being Satoshi. 2014. So they're just going back and reporting old stories. Also, we got a notification. We got a Tallycoin donation, but we can't see it. I want to see it. Oh. Okay, so Tallycoin, more things need to be clickable. But let's get started. Let's keep it going. We talked about Bitcoin. That's pretty much it. The rainy story was interesting, though. I like that one. That one I did not know. What's been going on today? Let's see. I'm not ready for the real news left. So first, let's talk about this. So this is Louisville, Kentucky. I'm going to screw up and call it Louisville like a dozen times. But here in Louisville, Kentucky, there's this girl. She's there. She's clearly press. She's wearing a yellow vest. She seems not threatening. She has a microphone in her hand. Let's just see what happens. Let's check this out.
Back to the tear gas. So it seems like that people were very prepared.
Right now we're behind the line.
Okay.
Okay, well, you keep going and go where you gotta go, and that's fine with us.
Okay.
We got plenty of time here.
Are you okay?
I'm getting shot. I'm getting
Katie, are you okay?
rubber bullets. It's okay. It's those pepper bullets.
Are they?
bullets.
Who are they aiming that at?
Now you're shooting at the
At
photographer.
us, like directly at us. Directly.
Why
at
are they
us.
doing that?
You're shooting at our crew.
I don't
Do they
know.
not know that? Obviously, they see the camera.
Right. The effect of the tear gas.
So it seems
Okay.
like that people were very
So that happened,
We're behind the
right?
line.
Okay.
Okay, well, you keep going and go where you gotta go, and that's fine with us.
Okay.
We got plenty of time here.
Are you okay?
I'm getting shot.
Okay, so the officer right here initially is aiming directly at the camera. So basically right here, he's thinking we're having all these protests based upon police brutality, right? This officer in Minnesota put his neck on a African-American person until he died, right? Police brutality. The man was brutal, killed the other man for allegedly passing a counterfeit $20 bill. And at these same protests, which your goal would be to decrease protests, have less brutality, this officer takes it upon himself to walk out above and in front of his line and then shoot at a journalist and a camera crew multiple times. Let's just watch this again. Let's see this.
Kate?
Right there, he had to reload. So right here, it's like, I made a bad decision. I shot at some journalists. What should I do next? Reload. Also, for the rest of the officers, someone from your group is randomly shooting at a camera crew. Is the camera crew a threat to you? Could this be seen as beyond your scope?
Katie, are you okay?
Rubber bullets. It's
They're actually pepper bullets, whatever that means. But
okay. It's those pepper
he's
bullets.
reloading again. He's having jamming problems. Like maybe this is his first time shooting at the press. Maybe he needs more practice or perhaps some training.
Those
Are
pepper
they?
bullets.
Who are they aiming
I
at?
see. I like this here. He turns and swivels. Do you see that? The complete turn right back to the camera. He's on a vendetta, this guy. What is his deal? What is going on in his head? Why is he like, oh, it's time to just shoot at journalists? Is he going to go back to the line with his buddies and laugh about this? Because I can tell you, Louisville, Kentucky, I can tell you, Louisville Police Department, we're going to find out his name. I'm not saying that in a mean way. It's going to be announced publicly. He's going to be laid off. He's going to have to take some kind of counseling. There's got to be some reason for this. And the people who trained him, the people who supervised him, you got to figure that he goes back to the line with his buddies and laughs about shooting pepper bullets at a camera crew. But once again, just like the situation yesterday with CNN, a situation still so present in our mind, I didn't even bother changing the chyron there because it's still pretty accurate. I mean, I could say something more crazy in the chyron, but the situation yesterday in Minnesota where they arrested the CNN crew, you guys, this is how cameras work. Cameras capture images, often live. This one's also live on the local news. You shot pepper bullets at the local news live on the local news. Okay? That's how cameras work. This is going to live forever. Pop, pop, pop. Pop, pop, pop. Now I see everybody here in the background. You're also going to get fired. You're also going to lose your jobs. Like, this is over. This doesn't happen anymore. He's shooting at our crew.
Do they not know that obviously they see the camera?
Look at her. Is she a threat? Does she have like a military helmet on? Is she engaging with a weapon? Is the man with the camera a threat? This is stupid. Like, this is, do you want to make the riot worse? And this isn't like an agent provocateur. We're going to talk about agent provocateurs. You know, this isn't the mainstream media, but this is an officer directly in uniform. Like, I mean, we could just go it's disappointing the camera crew didn't just walk over there and get his badge. Like, just, hey, hi, I like your badge, and I'd like you not to work here anymore. Like, look at this. He just walks out from, and again, like, oh, I don't like reporters, or I don't like liberals, or I don't like protesters, or whatever you want to say. Like, here's an orderly line of police that work for the people. They're paid with taxes, right? Tax money buys them all the shiny shields and the helmets and the stormtrooper shit. And this stormtrooper appears to be broken, right? Robot, fix the robot. Like, all these other robots are fine with this broken stormtrooper. So broken stormtrooper, again, he's engaged right here. He's engaged against a man with a camera. What do you think's going to happen? Like, problem with the gun, reloading, multiple men with sticks behind him. Hey, what's Jeff doing over there? Oh, Jeff's just shooting at a camera. Oh, Jeff's a real smart one, that one. Look, L6, right there. Like, we're going to get your badge. We're going to get your number. This is going to be on TV forever. Look at him. I like the way he walks up. Also, he looks a little heavy. I mean, that's probably a bulletproof vest, but needs to work out more. Maybe he wouldn't be so afraid of people with cameras if he was fit and did martial arts or something. So there it is. Just woo, right there in America. Woo, woo. So that's great. So that happened. Meanwhile, in New York City, it appears that all the undercover cops appear to be wearing white armbands. So you can see right here, undercover, undercover, white armband, undercover. So this seems a little obvious, guys. You got to work on this a little harder next time. You can do better. Meanwhile, in Oakland, California, everyone was having a peaceful protest when these white guys in all black showed up and started smashing stores. It's interesting stuff. It's almost like maybe you're just paid to do this, and you're just agent provocateurs and work for the other side, and you want to make the protests seem more violent and destructive to property than they are. And you just show up with your hammers and your tools to destroy things. I mean, right there, it's like all the other protesters didn't bring ball-peen hammers. That seems like a pretty specific goal. And nice work there. I don't know how effective smashing a backpack against it's going to be, but there you go. Now you're getting things done. And again, this is not, the rest of the protesters are back here saying, what the heck's wrong with these guys? Why are they just smashing things? This is not a part of our protest. Then we had yesterday in Minneapolis. Here he is, same kind of thing, sideways video, and there he is, just smashing out the windows of the AutoZone, wearing all black, military boots, carrying an umbrella, very strange, attracting attention. and just smashing the windows of the AutoZone. The AutoZone was later looted and burned. It's almost as with the broken windows theory adopted by Rudolph Giuliani in New York City. If you have broken windows, it'll lead to additional problems. So by smashing the windows here, they create additional problems for the protesters and expand the riot. Note, after he smashes the windows, he just walks away. He's not a part of the protest. Now, next time they need to arrest him. They need to citizens arrest. You just got to say, hey, you're destroying public property and you're not a part of this protest. It's almost like you're paid to do this. So, unfortunately, they didn't get him and he got away. But so that's happening too. Great. I'm sure nothing happened on Twitter. It's perfectly fine. Let's look at Twitter. Check out CoinFest in the UK, November 13th through 15th. Check it out in Manchester, UK. Very cool conference. I'm not sure. I'll be traveling by then, but if you're close by, maybe you can go check it out. President Taylor Swift writes, after stoking the fires of white supremacy and racism your entire presidency, you have the nerve to feign moral superiority before threatening violence? When the looting starts, the shooting starts? We will vote you out in November. Strong words from Taylor Swift. Truly strong, magnificent, really, given what she has to lose as a pop star, given the desire of people to be unthreatening and in the middle and not have political views. Truly inspiring. Magnificent. Joe Biden has spoken to George Floyd's family. It's not clear if President Trump has yet. Yesterday, the press secretary said that he hadn't to her knowledge, and the White House hasn't said whether that's changed today. So they haven't even reached out to the family. Breaking news, fired cop Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd, has been arrested. One officer isn't enough. They must all be charged. Joe Biden gave a magnificent address with the killing of George Floyd. Maybe we should watch it.
Once again, we had the words, heard the words, and they heard them. I can't breathe. An act of brutality so elemental, it did more than deny one more black man in America his civil rights and his human rights. It denied him of his very humanity. It denied him of his life. Depriving George Floyd is, as it deprived Eric Garner, one of the things every human being must be able to do. Breathe. So simple, so basic, so brutal. You know, with the same thing happened with Aubrey. The same thing happened with Breonna Taylor. The same thing with George Floyd. You know, we've spoken their names aloud. We cried them out in pain and in horror. We chiseled them into a long, suffering hearts. They're the latest additions to the endless list of stolen potential wiped out unnecessarily. You know, it's a list that dates back more than 400 years. Black men, black women, black children. The original sin of this country still stains our nation today, and sometimes we manage to overlook it. We just push forward with 1,000 other tasks in our daily life. But it's always there. In weeks like this, we see it plainly that we're a country with an open wound. And none of us can turn away. None of us can be silent. None of us can any longer can we hear the words, I can't breathe, and do nothing. You know, we can't fail victims like, you know, what Martin Luther King called the appalling silence of good people. Every day, African Americans go about their lives with a constant anxiety and trauma, wondering who'll be next. Imagine if every time your husband or son, wife or daughter left the house, you feared for their safety from bad actors and bad police. Imagine if you had to have that talk with your child about not asserting your rights taking the abuse handed out to them just so they could make it home. Imagine having police called on you just for sitting in Starbucks or renting an Airbnb or watching birds. You know, this is the norm black people in this country deal with. They don't have to imagine it. The anger and frustration and the exhaustion, it's undeniable. But that's not the promise of America. It's long past time that we made the promise of this nation real for all people. You know, this is no time for incendiary tweets. It's no time to encourage violence. This is a national crisis. We need real leadership right now. Leadership that will bring everyone to the table so we can take measures to root out systemic racism. It's time for us to take a hard look at the uncomfortable truths. It's time for us to face that deep, open wound we have in this nation. We need justice for George Floyd. We need real police reform that hold cops to a higher standard that so many of them actually meet, that holds bad cops accountable, that repairs relationship between law enforcement and the community they're sworn to protect. We need to stand up as a nation with the black community, with all minority communities, and come together as one America. That's the challenge we face. You know, it's going to require those of us who sit in some position of influence to finally deal with the abuse of power. The pain is too immense for one community to bear alone. I believe it's the duty of every American to grapple with it, and to grapple with it now. With our complacency, our silence, we are complicit in perpetuating these cycles of violence. Nothing about this will be easy or comfortable. But if we simply allow this wound to scab over once more, without treating the underlying injury, we'll never truly heal. The very soul of America is at stake. We must commit as a nation to pursue justice with every ounce of our being. We have to pursue it with real urgency. Got to make real the promise of America, which we've never fully grasped, that all men and women are equal, not only in creation, but throughout their lives. Again, to George's family, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I promise you, we do everything in our power to see to it that justice is had in your brother, your cousin's case. God love you all, and folks, we got to stand up. We got to move. We got to change.
Powerful speech by Joe Biden, specifically his show of empathy, his ability, even though clearly he's a white man, I'm a white man, his attempt to understand what it must be like for other people, his attempt to put himself in their shoes and to think about what it's like to live their life. Beautifully presidential. Reminds you of another era. Almost seems fake, like West Wing on TV. I mean, certainly it's a speech. It's written. It's crafted. Like, he delivered it well. But, I mean, I think he believes the things he was saying. I think he believes what he said in his speech. And compared to the tweets I'm about to read you, it's night and day. It's night and day. Even if you disagree with him politically or whatever, just the attitude that he showed in that speech, the care, the feeling. And I guess maybe you think it's fake or something, but no, I really thought it was a good speech. And compared to what I'm about to read you, and what we'll get to. But all right, so the news keeps going. The fired officer was arrested, one of them. Richard Painter, former U.S. attorney, says, "This took way too long. What about the other 3 officers?" He's absolutely right. More bad news from Minnesota. A Customs and Border Protection is flying a Predator drone, military technology used for surveilling and killing terrorists, over Minneapolis. So they're flying a Predator drone over the skies of Minneapolis. Here's an impressive sight. This is from Louisville, Kentucky. the same place where the police officer was shooting at the reporters. But here we have a line of white people forming a barrier between black protesters and the police. This is love. This is what you do with your privilege. So beautiful scene in Kentucky. They also had an issue in Kentucky with Breonna Taylor, which we'll talk more about here. Meanwhile, in Hong Kong, almost the same story. Nearly 100 children are arrested over national anthem and security law protests. Almost half of 396 people detained by Hong Kong police this week were students. Offenses range from possession of offensive weapons, so on and so forth. So it's happening in Hong Kong. 100 children seized. A political cartoon. Let's see if we can maybe open it in a new window or something. Oh, that worked. Here's President Trump reacting to a school shooting. He's golfing. President Trump reacting to COVID-19. He's golfing. Trump reacting to cops killing a black man. He is golfing. And Trump reacting to Twitter fact-checking him. He immediately signs an executive order. Rough. As always, jesters, political cartoons tell the truth when no one else can. And the power of an image, of seeing these three images of the overweight president golfing and then signing the executive order. It's a bad look to describe the political cartoon to those listening on the radio. University of Michigan survey out today. Expectations of income have collapsed. Expectations of inflation explodes upwards. It's up to you whether you want to listen to the wisdom of the crowds. New rules for Hong Kongers seeking to live or work in the United Kingdom. The Home Office appears to confirm that if China presses on with the security law, all 2.9 million British nationals overseas in Hong Kong will be allowed to come to the UK, whether or not they currently hold a BN British national passport. So impressive work by the United Kingdom, presumably at this point offering passports to 2.9 million British nationals who are currently stuck in the soon-to-be prison camp known as Hong Kong. Scott Dworkin even noted that Taylor Swift attacked Trump, as we discussed earlier. President Taylor Swift continues to impress. Hayes Brown points out a good point. He says, I'm still stuck on using tear gas in the middle of a pandemic that hits the respiratory system. It does seem like an incredibly bad choice and a bad time to use tear gas on the people. Just a reminder that Colin Kaepernick repeatedly tried peacefully to tell us every Sunday that we had a major systemic problem. Let's not ever forget how Colin Kaepernick was treated for his nonviolent protest that if perhaps we'd listened to, maybe we could have avoided all this. Jill Winebanks writes, Minnesota police officer who kneeled on George Floyd's neck, killing him, has been arrested, but the officers who watched and didn't stop him are still free. They are conspirators in his death and equally guilty unless there's proof they tried to stop him. These are serious people. These aren't protester people calling this out. This is one of the prosecutors from the Watergate case. It's very serious. When the protesters are white versus when the protesters are black. Also an excellent graphical use of Twitter's dark mode. Donald Trump. The governor of Michigan should give a little and put out the fire. These are very good people, but they are angry. They want their lives back again safely. See them, talk to them, and make a deal. Versus now when the protesters are black. These thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen. Just spoke to Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way. Any difficulty, and we will assume control. But when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you. Very strange. And that's only the beginning. We have a report from La Femme Nikita on Twitter. She says, and this is from KSTP, probably the local station there in Minneapolis. George Floyd and his killer, Officer Chauvin, both worked security at El Nuevo Rodeo Club, according to former owner, Maya Santamaria. Chauvin was our off-duty police for almost the entirety of the 17 years that we were open. They were working together at the same time. So this is very strange. The officer who murdered George Floyd knew him. They pretty much worked security on the same team at El Nuevo Rodeo Club. We'll see if this story gets more developed or if this is the last we ever hear of it. The Higher Education Lobbying Group is lobbying Congress requesting that they won't get sued for tuition and football revenue when students take COVID-19 home for Thanksgiving and kill grandma. That's right. They want to be preemptively indemnified from problems that could happen from the obvious bringing of college students from all around the country into one place, having them be in dorms, be in classes together, obviously spreading disease, spreading the virus. And then when they go home and murder their whole family with the virus, they don't want that. So they don't want to prevent it, but they want to be preventing the legal damage. Nice. That's a great look. That's admirable. That's good. The Derek Chauvin, the police officer, I'm probably saying his name wrong, sorry, but is charged with third-degree murder. That's only 35 seconds. Watch this. This is the official announcement. Please compare this with the announcement yesterday by the lawyer who said that they couldn't charge him because they weren't ready or something. Well, the police station's been burned down. Now they're ready to charge him.
In consultation as a group and as we said this morning, I'm authorizing and talking to General Jensen to fully mobilize the Minnesota National Guard, an action that has never been taken in the 164-year history of the Minnesota National Guard. We will pull in assets as we have been doing, and for those Minnesotans who are wondering, where are the fire trucks? Where are the police that are out there? The situation was so broad and the tactics were so bent on causing destruction that every single person we had mobilized, again, the largest in state history last evening, was engaged in that. So in consultation...
So this is a different video than I thought it was going to be. It seems like it's changed in the last day or something, or the link was bad. But it does sound like Minnesota has prepared the National Guard, and they are ready to go. They said that previously all of their units were engaged. So even while things were burning, everything was engaged. And now there's going to be even more protest. WTI crude breaks record. Of course, it's easy to break a record when you start out at a negative number. Here's more information on the Predator drone that is now circling the skies of Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the United States of America. The Predator drone in the United States of America. Rami Ismail writes, as an Arab who has paid attention to U.S. use of drones, I would urge local folks not to hold any weddings today, just in case this observation drone is preventedly armed and collateral damage happens. It won't even be reported as killed by drone because we don't track them. So watch out, Minnesota. Not a good day to have a wedding, at least historically. The police officer who murdered George Floyd is in police custody. Meanwhile, Netflix has acquired Hollywood's Egyptian Theater in Los Angeles. Very interesting for the classic movie house, as well as for Netflix, who still needs to play their movies in theaters so that they're eligible for awards. Apparently, they're going to do it right there in Hollywood. President Trump says nothing about Minnesota as the nation is on edge, and he leaves the Rose Garden without taking questions. Yamiche Alcindor, reporter from PBS, says, stunning. Stunning. President Trump makes his remarks on China, does not address Minnesota, turns and leaves the Rose Garden without taking questions. Aides this morning had expected him to address it. President says he's announcing efforts against China to protect U.S. national security, and he also said that they were going to be taking action on Hong Kong. Check out the Bitcoin group on the World Crypto Network. We had to be pretty serious this week and talk about the horrors of the world, but eventually we talked about a little Bitcoin too, so it was all right. Also, shout out to General Bytes, who have been supporting the Bitcoin and Lightning Network since 2019. You can use their Bitcoin ATMs right here to get Lightning Bitcoin as well. So it's very cool. Shout out to General Bytes. We were talking about all the Lightning companies and the ones that the Bitcoin companies that hadn't yet accepted Lightning and weren't doing it yet. And we want to talk about one of the good ones here and give a shout out to General Bytes. Very cool ATM software. I thought this would be the space launch. See, I don't know what time the space launch is, but you should keep an eye out for that. Joe Biden. It is time for us to take a hard look at uncomfortable truths. It is time for us to face the deep open wound we have in this nation. No need for justice for George Floyd. And here we have train art from a train in Belgium. We can see it go by. We'll let it go by again. I Can't Breathe. In memory of George Floyd. A graffiti art on a train in Belgium. This is truly a worldwide movement now. Everyone knows. Mike Pence is on Twitter claiming that the right of Americans to peacefully protest and let their voices be heard must be protected. However, don't forget, Mike Pence walked out of a football game because black men took a knee in peaceful protest. Don't believe a word this racist hypocrite says. That also cost American taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars so that they could have the security so that Mike Pence could attend the 49ers game where, of course, Colin Kaepernick took the knee to protest against this exact thing that we're happening now, the mistreatment of African Americans by police officers and general brutality. Every editorial board, news outlet, former president, elected, and every rational official needs to be calling on Trump to resign now. Last night I was getting ready to watch the bevy of YouTube channels all showing multiple screens of protest action from multiple locations, but one of the best was this one here called Smoke and Scan. You can check it out. Apparently this is his hobby. This is what he's into. He likes to smoke and listen to police scanners. So he had all the information. He knew that the police were going to attack the protesters right before they did. So it was pretty fun to watch that channel and watch the situation develop, just trying to understand the news and understand what's happening. Important information from Sal the Agorist. He shares this meme. What you can do with a tear gas canister. All you do is you bring a traffic cone. Usually they're on the street. You can find them. Put the traffic cone over the tear canister to funnel the gas. Pour water into the top of the traffic cone. Good to know. Dr. Cornel West says that America is a failed social experiment. He's really clever. Let's listen to him for a couple minutes, try to understand what's going on. Dr. Cornel West on CNN, played with fair use for commentary value to attempt to understand the news. Not that YouTube cares, but.
Well, I just want to begin by extending my condolences to the Floyd family. They exemplify spiritual nobility. It's very important. Long history, 400 years of black people having to come to terms with these kinds of vicious murders and assassinations and attacks. Now, I know I haven't seen you, Anderson, since the little brother Wyatt Morgan made his appearance. And in the midst of all of this ugly greed and hatred and corruption, it's very important to also celebrate birth and reverence here. But I think what we're really experiencing here, though, brother, and I say this in all honesty and deep sadness, because, you know, I've been trying to bear witness for over 53 years, telling the truth and trying to say something about the least of these. But I think we are witnessing America as a failed social experiment. And what I mean by that is that the history of black people for over 200 and some years in America has been looking at America's failure. Its capitalist economy could not generate and deliver in such a way that people could live lives of decency. The nation state, its criminal justice system, its legal system could not generate protection of rights and liberties. And now our culture, of course, is so market-driven, everybody for sale, everything for sale. It can't deliver the kind of really real nourishment for soul, for meaning, for purpose. And so when you get this perfect storm of all of these multiple failures at these different levels of the American empire, and Martin King already told us about that. When I saw those pictures there in Atlanta, you could see Martin right there in Atlanta saying, I told you about militarism, I told you about poverty, I told you about materialism, I told you about racism in all of its forms, whatever forms it takes. I told you about xenophobia. And what we've seen in America is now these chickens coming home to roost. You're reaping what you sow. And in this instant, you have Brother George, where it is so clear it is a lynching at the highest level. Nobody can deny it. And I thank God that we have people in the streets. Can you imagine this kind of lynching taking place and people are indifferent? People don't care? People are callous? You have just a few people out there with signs. I recall the moments in which during the Reagan years, there was a few of us out there. In the 60s, you had masses out there. Now you've got a younger generation of all of these different colors and genders and sexual orientations saying, we won't take it any longer. But you know what's sad about it, though, brother? At the deepest level? It looks as if the system cannot reform itself. We've tried black faces in high places. Too often our black politicians, professional class, middle class, become too accommodated to the capitalist economy, too accommodated to the militarized nation state, too accommodated to the market-driven culture tied with celebrity status, power, fame, all of that superficial stuff that means so much to so many fellow citizens.
Oh, I could have kept that going. Man, that would have been great. I don't know why that was so short, but that was fantastic by Cornel West. He even almost gave us hope in the middle, that it is a good thing. So many people are in the streets, so many people of different colors and classes and groups, all protesting, all offended by this, all sharing the same indignation as the family. He's right to call it a modern-day lynching, and that we watched it on TV. We've all seen it, and that we've seen it before. We've seen it over and over again. And he makes a very strong point, whether or not the system can be reformed, whether or not it can be saved. He describes America as a failed social experiment, an attempt to integrate that failed. It failed politically. It failed with the economy, and it failed with the police and the social justice, the justice system, the criminal justice system. It failed. Meanwhile, we were watching CNN a little bit later, 3 hours later, and protesters were clashing with the Secret Service outside of the White House. They had a metal barricade that the officers were holding in place. The protesters fought with the officers and took several pieces of the barricade away from them. It was gripping television, incredible to watch. As you can see from just the screenshot here, the camera angle was that close. They were right in there. More bad news from America. A party goer at the controversial Lake of the Ozarks pool party has tested positive for COVID-19, potentially exposing hundreds. We all knew this was going to happen. We all watched it happen. I feel sorry for these people, but then again, certainly they were warned. Here's a better shot from CNN, again, just taking pictures of the TV here, and apologies for the blurriness. But here it is right here. You can see the protesters and the Secret Service and the Capitol Police fighting over the barricade. Note that these barricades attach on the left and the right with a simple pole that fits into another pole, so that if you do bring them upward like this, they then stop being a barricade and instead become a piece of metal. The protesters won this battle, and they won the previous battle. They removed and dismantled the barricades, and later on the police were standing right up against the protesters. No barrier was available to them. And this was just yesterday. Here's a shot from Jennifer in Seattle. She went to the protest. Looks like they've got some tear gas and some smoke, so it's happening even in Seattle. Next time, got to keep the camera a little more steady. A bit tough to watch, but again, right in the middle of it, right from our audience out there in the protest, making voice heard. And there's one of those Amazon to-go shops. I'd like to go there. That's that one where you can walk in and it'll somehow scan you, and then you just put your stuff in your cart and then you walk out. It's crazy. In Las Vegas, we also had protests here. Officers jumped someone crossing the street with no warning. The officers shared smiles and pats on the back afterwards. They have repeatedly jumped peaceful protesters crossing the street. And this kind of culture within the police has to go, right? It's not funny anymore. That guy earlier in Louisville who was shooting at a reporter probably went back to the line with the same smiles and the pats on the back. Yes, you're a military unit. You're part of a military unit. You have camaraderie and this kind of thing. But it's not going to be acceptable anymore. Celebrating after you beat someone up is going to get you fired. These body cameras are continuing to make it harder to be a police officer who likes to beat up people and laugh about it. One era is ending and a new era is beginning. We talked earlier about agent provocateurs. Here we see in New York City several presumably undercover police officers all wearing white bands on their arms to identify them from other officers so they don't get beat up like normal people. We see you. The protest in Washington, D.C. at the White House. Sorry about the audio. Now with video. You can see the barricades going back and forth. The police and Secret Service attempting to maintain control of the barricades. The protesters pushing through. There's a breach right there. A lot of this is just old-timey soldier stuff, right? You have a line. A line is a strong thing. If you can hold that line, you can keep the protesters out. Just like Napoleonic times, if there's a break in that line, the protesters can begin to encircle you. You don't have a line anymore. You don't have any support. You don't have any strength. So at this point, the Secret Service are beginning to lose the line at the White House. This is just the barricade. There's an additional fence beyond this. And as we'll learn later from the president, there's allegedly dogs and ominous weapons and Secret Service who are excited to attack Americans. But yes, this is just yesterday. This is just the warm-up. Here's another shot from the White House. I'm going to keep the audio off, hopefully. Nice. When you go full screen on Twitter video, it automatically turns the audio on. That's so smart. Oh, gosh. But anyway, great job, Twitter. There it is right here at the White House. You can see this large wall-type fence thing here. This is part of a construction project. This is not normally there. But you see beyond that, we have just the metal fence. Certainly it's a strong fence and all that kind of thing. But if you have enough people, you can push over most fences. And, of course, fences have gates, too, which also makes them not as good as walls. We can see here the protesters pushing back against the barricades right at the White House. And that was just yesterday before they gave people all day and a Saturday to really warm up. And now a message from Adam Back. When Rome is burning, history does not care which factions are more wrong. Zoom out. The solution does not lie within the empire. Opt out, exit, leave. Build and drive Bitcoin adoption. Buy, hold. That's the most effective thing you can do. And it's enough. Very nice message from Adam Back. Meanwhile, in America, record unemployment, economy in turmoil, 100,000 dead Americans within 3 months, unrest in the American streets. This is why you don't elevate a reality TV game show host to the highest office. Everyone wondered what would happen, how bad it would be. Some people celebrated it. They were like, I like to destroy things. I think it's going to be fun. Is it still fun? Are we winning? Is this really the winning that we were promised? Check out a live demo of Reward Pool, a great way for you to make some Satoshis while filling out a survey or doing a task, something like that. It's kind of like Amazon Mechanical Turk, but it now works on the Lightning Network thanks to the open source LN Bits project by Ben and Dan, who's working on it himself. Check out Reward Pool portal at rewardportal.com. We watched this earlier, but it's worth watching again. This is a reporter in Louisville, Kentucky. She works for a local news station. She covers things like the opening of a new grocery store or animals that you can adopt at the local shelter, or maybe somebody learned to read at school. You know, those kind of stories. And here again, the police are in a position of strength. They have a line. They're protecting their line. They all need to act in military discipline here. If one of them leaves the line, if several of them leave the line, there would be a hole in the line. So whoever's in charge here is responsible for all of these officers.
We got plenty of time here.
Wait a minute. What's this officer doing right here? He's 3 feet out ahead of the line. All the other officers seem to have sticks. This officer has a pepper bullet gun. He's out by himself. Who's in charge of this officer? Not only the name of the officer, but the people in charge. He's breaking military discipline. He's breaking the line. Unless he was ordered to remove these people and to shoot at them, which again, then we have a direct order from a superior. So now they're both guilty, which they're both guilty anyway. You can hear the woman screaming. This is a woman without a helmet, with clearly, shoulder-length blonde hair, wearing a yellow vest, clearly not an enemy combatant. She has a camera crew with her. They have a large camera and a microphone.
Are you okay?
He's shooting at her. He's shooting repeatedly at her in Kentucky, in America, in Louisville. He's shooting repeatedly at an unarmed reporter with a camera.
Katie, are you okay?
He's reloading. He's shooting again.
Rubber bullets, it's okay. It's those pepper.
He's reloading again. Seems to not be able to get the kind of rapid fire shooting that he expects. Maybe he should use a grenade or something.
It's those
Are
pepper
they,
bullets.
who are they aiming at?
Swivel and turn. He's continuing to shoot. This officer has broken off from the line. This officer is now on his own, torturing reporters in Kentucky, in America, in Louisville. And we're going to know his name. Now he's shooting at the photographer. It's almost, why are they doing this? Look at her. Is she a threat in any situation, in any simulation? Is she a threat? Should she be shot at? Like, they already arrested the CNN crew randomly just yesterday, and that was in Minnesota. That's a different city, but still, this is the threat? She's carrying a fuzzy microphone in her hand. Is that a gun of some kind? It's a microphone. Clearly they can see the camera.
So it seems like that people were very prepared.
Right now we're behind the line.
Okay.
Okay, well, you keep going and go where you gotta go, and that's fine with us. We got plenty of time here.
Are you okay?
I'm getting shot. I'm getting
Katie, are you okay?
rubber bullets. It's okay. It's those pepper bullets. It's those
Are
pepper
they?
bullets.
Who are
It's
they
not
aiming
okay.
that at?
Now he's shooting at the photographer.
Like directly at us. Directly.
Why are they doing that?
He's shooting at our crew.
I don't
Do
know.
they not know that? Obviously, they see the
This video will last forever, you know?
Right.
That's how cameras work,
So it seems like that
right?
people were very
The film is
prepared.
exposed. So here it is. Again, I suppose she's approaching the line. They're going to say that they thought she was a threat. I don't know what kind of threat assessment they're working on. Look at that guy. Stepping forward, advancing.
Katie,
Problems with the reloading, stepping forward, advancing. Where's the rest of his crew? Why is he all out by himself? What kind of military discipline is this? Officers, like, are just allowed to walk out by themselves and shoot at people randomly? Like, who has control of this group? The commander needs to be fired here. Like, it's not just this one guy. It's the commander. It's the whole group. It's a big problem. Louisville, Kentucky, you have a big problem. During his campaign for president, Donald Trump promised, "We're going to win so much, you're going to get sick and tired of winning." Here's some photos from the riots in Minnesota. That's the police station, the 3rd precinct, being set on fire. That's an Arby's being set on fire. That's another building clearly burning down. That's an upside-down American flag, a sign of distress. And a liquor store burning down. Getting tired of winning. So much winning. Oh, no, Twitter is so difficult. There we go. Oh, we're still rolling. All right. A message from the President of the United States, at least today. Great job last night by the White House, by the U.S. Secret Service. They were not only totally professional, but very cool. I was inside, watched every move, and couldn't have felt more safe. They let the protesters scream and rant as much as they wanted. But whenever someone got too frisky or out of line, they would quickly come down on them. Hard. Didn't know what hit them. The front line was replaced with fresh agents like magic. Big crowd, professionally organized. But nobody came close to breaching the fence. If they had, they would have been greeted by the most vicious dogs and the most ominous weapons I have ever seen. That's when people would have been really badly hurt, at least. Many Secret Service agents were just waiting for action. We put the young ones on the front line, sir. They love it. All right. Saddam Trump tweeting from his palace bunker this morning, "The Americans are not in Baghdad. We will crush them. Our dogs are vicious. Our young warriors volunteered to defend me with their lives. Very cool. Very professional. Don't get frisky, America. Don't get frisky. There's a screenshot right there of the officer. We're going to know his name within 24 hours. Louisville, Kentucky. Police officer. Shooting at cameramen. The police are a violent gang. They are terrorists. They will remain this way until they are sent to jail for things like this. Also, in what fucking world is assaulting people for exercising their First Amendment rights remotely okay? We will get his name. We will get his badge. Then we'll get his superiors and the people who trained him. How stupid are the police in America? Answer. So stupid, they shoot at reporters during protests over police brutality. Your job is to increase the peace, not to decrease it. Your job is to make the riot go shorter, not longer. Police literally opening fire on the free press. This is beyond belief wrong. Cop in Louisville pointing gun at TV news crew and someone shooting at crew. Those cops should be fired. Police chief needs to act. They also had an issue in Louisville, Kentucky, where Breonna Taylor was murdered in her house by police who raided the wrong house and was shot 8 times while she was sleeping. You can call the Louisville mayor and demand that the police chief be fired. Also, please sign the petition below. At least 7 people were shot as protesters in Louisville demonstrated against the killing of Breonna Taylor, a black woman fatally shot by police in her home in March. Shots were fired during a protest in Louisville, Kentucky, as tensions continued to escalate in the city. Protesters had gathered in the streets to call for justice in the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor by 3 white officers in March. And there she is, Breonna Taylor. She was shot 8 times in her home on March 13th. Breonna Taylor. That was her name. We have our first response from the Louisville police, and we're not going to like it. I want to apologize. Louisville police spokesman Jesse Halliday told the Courier-Journal, it's not something that should have occurred if she was singled out as a reporter. Doesn't sound like she's seen the video. Halliday said she couldn't tell who the officer was at this time. We're going to find out. But that police would review the video again, and if we need to do any investigation for discipline, we will do that. If you need, you have an officer 3 feet off from his line firing at reporters. Unless he was ordered to do that, you have a complete breakdown in your system. And we have it on video. Also in Louisville, Kentucky, 2 black men were shot in the street by police at a peaceful protest, and no one is fucking talking about it. They don't know where the shots came from. 2 black men were shot in the ground that he saw. He did not see any police nearby, but they quickly found the men on the ground and started to deliver first aid. So protests in Kentucky did turn additionally violent after the police shot at a reporter and just in general. Devin Chauvin, his wife wants a divorce. Her utmost sympathy lies with George Floyd. That's right. There are punishments. Other people will not accept this, even your wife. So the wife of one of the 4 police officers who helped kill George Floyd is leaving him. What about the other 3 wives? Shout out to Vladimir Putin. This must be a fantastic day for him. America in complete chaos. Election interference, incredibly successful. Whether to elect a knowing idiot or just an idiot. We've never seen such a massive destabilization of a foreign power by a spy agency in history. Truly a fantastic achievement by KGB agent Vladimir Putin. Truly a day to celebrate. I mean, you got to give it to him. I mean, when you win, you win. That guy won. That guy won big. We lost. He won. Is the president actually saying that the Secret Service was eager to set dogs on people and use weapons on U.S. citizens? That's alarming. And as Stone Kettle writes, that is exactly what he's saying. And he doubled and tripled down on it. Thank you, Donald Trump, for reminding people this morning why you must resign. Not like anyone needed a reminder, but Trump resign now is trending on Twitter. I think it's the number 3 or number 4 most popular hashtag of the day. You will be greeted with the most vicious dogs and most ominous weapons I have ever seen. That's when people would have been really badly hurt, at least, implying that they might be killed. Many Secret Service agents just waiting for action. We put the young ones on the front line, sir. They love it. Here's a video from Atlanta, Georgia, of a moment of silence and solidarity for the death of Gavin Floyd. Curtis Floyd. Fucking names. George Floyd. Sorry. Knew I was going to fuck that up. George Floyd. Got a shout out to Jess Dweck. He says, I can't wait to vote out Trump in the election that isn't happening. We talked about the group in Oakland, the agent provocateurs that showed up with hammers and smashed businesses. Hopefully tonight, some of the protesters can capture some of these agent provocateurs, and we can interview them and find out why they're smashing everything. Trump resign now is trending at 30,000 retweets. 30,000 people believe that Trump should resign now. Wesley writes, he says, we're seeing some commentary that this type of hostility towards the press is due to Trump. However, police in Ferguson did this on many nights. Full camera crews and reporters targeted with arrests, tear gas, rubber bullets, and on some nights threatened with lethal force. And that was in 2014. So this problem runs deep in the police force of America. For those of you quoting Sweden saying that it's a great idea to get herd immunity and be killed off like animals, Sweden is not slowing down. The epidemic is continuing at a steady pace, among a dozen different graphs where it is clearly not a success, with both confirmed cases and confirmed deaths continuing to rise in Sweden. Previously, it was at a rate of at least 3 to 6 times their fellow Norwegian countrymen who also have similarly good healthcare systems and actually did something to try to protect their citizens from this virus. Things are already dangerous, but they're likely about to get a whole lot worse. Trump, Republicans, and all the bitter nationalists who support them are on the defensive. They're surrounded, falling into a siege mentality. Paranoid. Be careful, folks. Be damn careful. We've got another message from the President of the United States, I guess. The professionally managed so-called protesters at the White House had little to do with the memory of George Floyd. They were just there to cause trouble. The Secret Service handled them easily. Tonight, I understand, is MAGA night at the White House. It's like a movie. I couldn't even understand it when I read it, like to really think about it. Like, really, is he really saying that he wants everyone to go to the White House tonight on Saturday night, giving everyone on the East Coast a full day's warning to plan their trip to go to the White House? Does he really want to say this, that the Secret Service handled them easy? He really wants to say that he wants more riots. He wants more people in the street. He wants chaos. Because he'll do anything to distract you from the reality that 100,000 people died from COVID-19. And if we had started social distancing even a week earlier, we could have saved 30,000 people. Don't think about that. Think about this. As Stone Kettle writes, it's a rough morning for the Fuhrer. He put this post out 3 different times. He put it out 9 minutes ago. He put it out 15 minutes ago. And he put it out 22 minutes ago. He got 3,000 retweets, 2,000 retweets, and 4,000 retweets. 3 times he told people that it's MAGA night at the White House. It's just crazy. Angus Johnson writes, the President of the United States is attempting to incite a riot, specifically a pitched battle between his supporters and his opponents at the White House. And just to recap what we've been talking about these last few days about Twitter and the Kobayashi Maru, the unwinnable decision, the no-win scenario. Twitter faced this a few days ago. Their options were very clear. Do nothing. Allow the president to keep saying crazy things on the platform. Remove the president from the platform entirely. Or what Twitter chose, the middle road. They chose to mark the president's tweets as fact-check tweets. They chose to mark the president's tweets as tweets that inspired and incited violence. And what they did is they ended up now in a situation where Twitter has taken responsibility for whatever the president tweets. Whatever the president tweets, now we must assume is going to be fact-checked or violence-checked by Twitter. Twitter has put themselves in an even worse situation. The president is now using Twitter, which again, as much as it's fun to pretend that it's free speech and that it's a public space and all that, it's a private company. He's using the software and the platform of a private company to spread a message of violence and rioting. He's requesting his supporters to show up tonight to fight the protesters at the White House on a private platform owned by Twitter. So if people are hurt tonight, they might have heard about it, the invitation to be hurt, from a private company called Twitter. And they now could sue them. So Twitter's in real trouble. Once again, the only way out is to go all the way and to remove him, especially now that they've gone halfway with the pathetic warning messages. They have to go all the way if they want to continue existing. Otherwise, the lawsuits will destroy them. So the only way to win is action. FBI Director Christopher Wray sent an email to employees Friday night saying that people's trust in law enforcement is eroded when officers fail to protect and serve everybody. This is similar to what Cornel West was talking about. Let's just read a portion of the director of the FBI's email. Law enforcement officers have indispensable and often dangerous jobs, but that doesn't diminish the crucial, overarching role that we play in society to protect and serve all citizens, no matter their race, creed, orientation, or station in life. This, of course, includes citizens who are in law enforcement custody. When we fail to honor their rights, we not only tarnish the badge we wear, we completely erode the trust so many of us in law enforcement work so hard to build, particularly within minority communities. These events this past week in Minneapolis clearly illustrate just how quickly that trust can be lost. As law enforcement, we're bound by an oath to serve all members of our community with equal compassion, professionalism, dignity, and respect. The American people should expect nothing less from us. And we haven't yet seen any FBI agents shooting at reporters. So far, so good. Tonight, I understand, is MAGA night at the White House. At this point, the United States has no president. 104,000 dead Americans can't attend MAGA night. 41 million unemployed Americans can't afford to attend MAGA night. I'm not sure about the rest. It's not 100% clear what Trump means by MAGA night at the White House. Is he calling on his thugs to attack protesters? A lot of people can't even understand this. It's so shocking. It really blows your frames open. If you're a Trump supporter and you're like, does he just really want us to go down there and fight with the other people in the street to detract and distract from his COVID-19 failures and the destruction of the economy? Is that really what he's saying? Is that really something you want to do? Is that a private army you want to be a part of? I don't know if Trump is just plain dumb or something, but as president of the United States during unprecedented social unrest, right in the middle of the worst pandemic in modern history, with more than 100,000 dead and 40 million jobless, you don't mock protesters like this, right? Unless you wanted it to get worse. Unless you like seeing America destroyed. Unless the person you work for likes it when you destroy America. I don't know why someone would do this. It's insane. And this, of course, gets back to the reading that we started off the show with, at least one of the readings. Thanks to everybody for sticking in through all those readings. I can't believe you made it. Those are supposed to scare people away. But yes, during the War of 1812, the British burnt down the White House. They burned it to the original timbers. There was nothing left. Is it going to happen again tonight? And that does seem, what the president does seem to be inspiring, MAGA night at the White House. He's pretty much asking the protesters to come out there, threatening them with vicious dogs and ominous weapons, and a line of young Secret Service agents who apparently are eager to attack American citizens. Obviously, these Secret Service agents should be immediately fired, right? If you're eager to attack American citizens and you work in law enforcement, you're in the wrong business, right? Protect and serve, like the guy who was shooting at the camera crew. That was his last day as a police officer. It's over now. You can't go back to protecting and serving after you've been shooting at a reporter for fun. And the same for people who claim that it's MAGA night and claim that they have ominous weapons and dogs. Meanwhile, President Trump is spending all day traveling to and from Florida for the space shuttle launch. Not space shuttle. in the middle of a pandemic, while chaos ensures due to his failed leadership. He also plans on speaking at 5 p.m. for 45 minutes. Unless he's resigning, he shouldn't speak. He's probably going to make it worse. He's probably going to get up there at 5 p.m. and say, I'll be home in a few hours, looking forward to MAGA night at the White House. I hope to see you guys on the lawn, which is a big mistake. You saw what happened in Minneapolis, right? The police left the precinct. They went out the back door, they drove away, and they let the protesters burn it down. Is that going to happen tonight at the White House? Do you really want a situation where you're hiding out in your bunker and the American people themselves are wandering all over, looking for the big block of cheese? Andrew Jackson had a party at the White House once after he was elected. He was a bit of a wild man. People were coming in and out of the windows. They were destroying the furnishing. They were pretty much doing everything you can against the White House except burning it down. And it was all so they could get the big block of cheese that Andrew Jackson had promised them. What about Trump? Does he also have a big block of cheese? Maybe we'll find out. Trump is ranting about using the Secret Service to attack protesters, using the most ominous weapons and the most vicious dogs. He also alluded to protesters being killed, saying that people would at least be very badly hurt if they breached the fence, which is, again, pretty much like advertising it, right? We've all seen that warning on the beginning of Jackass. Don't try this at home. They put that up because they know everyone's going to try it at home. Unfortunately, he's asking for something to happen. Trump is using Twitter to incite violence and activate his MAGA terror cells. I never thought I would have to say that the President of the United States is a national security threat, but here we are. And like we've been saying, it's bad news for Twitter. Twitter further tightened the restrictions on the messages from President Trump and the White House by blocking users from liking or replying to them, though people could still retweet the message if they added a comment of their own. It's not enough. It's not enough, Jack. He just used Twitter to threaten America with dogs and ominous weapons. That's your platform. That's your corporate logo. That's your legal liability. It's over, Jack. The only way to win is to remove him from the platform. Let him make his own Twitter full of hate. Don't be legally liable and responsible for what's going on your platform. Meanwhile, check it out. People in the... God, that's annoying, Twitter. How unbelievable. But meanwhile, people in protest in Tokyo standing in solidarity with George Floyd and Minneapolis and the protesters in America. Look at this awesome and impressive protest from Tokyo. Stop racism. Fuck the police. Stop police brutality. Even in Tokyo, Japan, they stand with the protesters. They stand with the people. And they stand with George Floyd. Purely as a practical matter, a police force without legitimacy cannot enforce the law. And here's a fantastic philosophical thread breaking it down. Anyone who taught high school or saw a teacher lose control of a class when they were a student knows a weak and analogical version of this. A police force is a reasonably recent innovation, early 1800s for London, etc. It displaces a bottom-up system that preceded it and makes society more fragile as a result. Also, potentially better, fairer, and safer, but more fragile. I'm sure we'll see plenty of interesting criminology studies on the collapse of legitimacy in these riots, but it has the feeling of common knowledge collapse. Everyone knew X, but now everyone knows that everyone knows X. Seeing the police themselves start to riot is crazy. This is not a matter of two armies, but a tiny number of people, 800 in Minneapolis, against, depending on how bad things get, 500,000. I'm reminded of a weird story that appeared in Harvard Magazine by a woman who was part of the occupation of University Hall in 1969. That was a police riot of a different kind. Irish cops beating the hell out of privileged wasps. As I remember, the cop comes up to her with his baton and is about to smash it down on her face. She says no, smash that instead, and points to a fancy glass display case, which, thankfully, he does. A strange moment. Perhaps we got to thinking of police as another branch of the army. It's not just that they're not, by the Constitution, it's that they can't ever be. They can only function if they're seen by 99% of the people, 99% of the time, as doing the right thing. For some, value of 99%, but not too far off, I can't imagine the police being able to function when less than, say, 70% of the people think them legitimate. Legitimacy doesn't mean being liked, and it doesn't mean moral. It just means being perceived as legitimate. It's also not an individual matter, but a social one. In as much as a people is moral, however, legitimacy will have a moral component. There's also a fantastic post here where he outlines the founding principles of Scotland Yard. Let's see, Twitter, can I have this? Thank you. The modern police force was created by Robert Peel in 1829 in London. Called the Metropolitan Police Force, it was located in Scotland Yard. Legitimately, it was predicated on 9 following principles. And just really briefly, to prevent crime and disorder as an alternative to their repression by military force and severity of legal punishment. So preventing crime and disorder. To recognize that the power of the police to fulfill their functions and duties is always dependent on public approval of their existence, actions, and behavior, and on their ability to secure and maintain public respect. Legitimacy was founded on public approval. And, here's 15 more replies. Twitter's hidden it. To recognize always that to secure and maintain the respect and approval of the public means also the securing the willing cooperation of the public in the task of securing observance of laws. To recognize always that the extent to which the cooperation of the public can be secured diminishes proportionately the necessity, the use of physical force and compulsion for achieving police objectives. There's an inverse relationship of force to cooperation. To seek and preserve public favor, not by pandering to public opinion, but by constantly demonstrating absolutely impartial service to the law, in complete independence of policy and without regard to the justice or injustice of the substance of individual laws. By offering of individual service and friendship to all members of the public, without regard to their wealth or social standing, by ready exercise of courtesy and friendly good humor, and by ready offerings of individual sacrifice in protecting and preserving life. To use physical force only when the exercise of persuasion, advice, and warning is found to be insufficient to obtain public cooperation to an extent necessary to secure observance of law or to preserve order, and to use only the minimum degree of physical force which is necessary on any particular occasion for achieving a police objective. As the author says, a timely section indeed. To maintain at all times a relationship with the public that gives reality to the historic tradition that the police are the public and that the public are the police. the police being the only members of the public who are paid to give full-time attention to duties which are incumbent on every citizen in the interests of community welfare and existence. 8. To recognize always the need for strict adherence to police executive functions and to refrain from even seeming to usurp the powers of the judiciary, of avenging individuals or the state, and of authoritatively judging guilt and punishing the guilty. Number 9, to recognize always that the test of police efficiency is the absence of crime and disorder, not the visible evidence of police action in dealing with them. And that's his favorite. He says, no arrests is a good day. This is how a police force maintains legitimacy. And he said he was overcome with respect for the police chief in Atlanta, Georgia. She walked into a crowd of protesters, talked, and listened to everyone. She is a member of the public who works by their approval. She gets it. Impressive words. The founding of Scotland Yard right here, and the principles that it was founded on. Most of these principles result in protecting the public, not harming the public, not attacking the public, not threatening the public. It's a fantastic thread on another fantastic thread. But we've got a party to go to tonight. It's MAGA night. My friend on Twitter, Christopher Boozy, writes, Dear Jack, I have never begged another man for anything in my life, but I am begging you to remove Trump from Twitter before innocent people are killed because of his inflammatory rhetoric. Trump is trying to incite violence, and something needs to be done before it's too late. Just an honest, kind, and protective statement from Chris. This is also a really great speech here by, I think he's called Killer Mike. He's a rapper. Well, first let me finish up with Chris. So it was really unfortunate. Chris said that nice thing, and he went out on a limb there, and he used the word beg, which is a word of weakness. He exposed a potential weakness in asking Jack to remove Trump from Twitter so that we wouldn't have his violent tweets anymore. It was a rhetorical device, right? And to that, for reasons I can't understand, Francis Pouliot decided to introduce himself into our conversation and said, "Keep begging, little bitch." So first of all, this wasn't really part of our conversation. I'm not sure why Francis felt the need to say this. It's a hateful thing to say, especially to Mr. Bouzet, who's an African-American man, clearly has skin in the game here. Terrible pun, sorry. But yeah, so I had to take action, and I had to block Francis. I don't usually block people. I usually mute people. Sorry. But, if you want to fight with people, it's not really the place for it. If you want to have a debate, it's not really the place for it. And you're just not going to win anyone over with this kind of direct insult game. It's a loss of decorum. So goodbye to Francis Pouliot. And now a really impressive and honest speech. I believe this gentleman is a rapper. His name, I believe, is Killer Mike. I don't want to talk out of school, but here it is, a fantastic and honest speech.
And I don't want to be here. I'm the son of an Atlanta City police officer. My cousin is an Atlanta City police officer, and my other cousin, East Point police officer. And I got a lot of love and respect for police officers, down to the original 8 police officers in Atlanta that even after becoming police had to dress in a YMCA because white officers didn't want to get dressed with niggers. And here we are 80 years later. I watched a white officer assassinate a black man. And I know that tore your heart out. And I know it's crippling. And I have nothing positive to say in this moment because I don't want to be here. But I'm responsible to be here because it wasn't just Dr. King and people dressed nicely who marched and protested to progress this city and so many other cities. It was people like my grandmother, people like my aunts and uncles who were members of SCLC and NAACP, and in particular, Reverend James Orange, Mrs. Alice Johnson, and Reverend Love, who we just lost last year. So I'm duty-bound to be here to simply say that it is your duty not to burn your own house down for anger with an enemy. It is your duty to fortify your own house so that you may be a house of refuge in times of organization. And now is the time to plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. It is time to beat up prosecutors you don't like at the voting booth. It is time to hold mayoral offices accountable, chiefs and deputy chiefs. Atlanta is not perfect, but we're a lot better than we ever were, and we're a lot better than cities are. I'm mad as hell. I woke up wanting to see the world burn down yesterday because I'm tired of seeing black men die. He casually put his knee on a human being's neck for 9 minutes as he died like a zebra in the clutch of a lion's jaw. And we watch it like murder porn over and over again. So that's why children are burning to the ground. They don't know what else to do. And it is the responsibility of us to make this better right now. We don't want to see one officer charged. We want to see 4 officers prosecuted and sentenced. We don't want to see targets burning. We want to see the system that sets up for systemic racism burnt to the ground. And as I sit here in Georgia, home of Stevens, Georgia, former vice president of the Confederacy, white man said that law, fundamental law, stated that whites were naturally the superior race, and the Confederacy was built on a cornerstone. It's called a cornerstone speech. Look it up. The cornerstone speech that blacks would always be subordinate. That officer believed that speech because he killed that man like an animal. In this city, officers have done horrendous things and they have been prosecuted. This city's cut different. In this city, you can find over 50 restaurants owned by black women. I didn't say minority, and I didn't say women of color. So after you burn down your own home, what do you have left but char and ash? CNN? Ted did a great thing. I love CNN, I love Cartoon Network, but I'd like to say to CNN right now, karma's a mother. Stop feeding fear and anger every day. Stop making people feel so fearful. Give them hope. I'm glad they only took down a sign and defaced a building and they're not killing human beings like that policeman did. I'm glad that they only destroyed some brick and mortar and they didn't rip a father from a son. They didn't rip a son from a mother like the policeman did. When a man yells for his mother in duress and pain and she's dead, he is essentially yelling, please God, don't let it happen to me. And we watch that. So my question for us on the other side of this camera is, after it burns, will we be left with charred, or will we rise like a phoenix out of the ashes that Atlanta has always done? Will we use this as a moment to say that we will not do what other cities have done, and in fact, we will get better than we've been? We got good enough to destroy cash bonds. You don't have to worry about going to jail for something petty. We got smart enough to decriminalize marijuana. How smart are we going to be in the next 15 or 20 years to keep us ahead of this curve? So that much like when South Africa suffered apartheid, you had Andy and other politicians that could make sure that Atlanta said, Coca-Cola, we love you, but if you don't pull out of South Africa, we're going to leave. We're not going to drink Coca-Cola anymore. Coca-Cola jumped on their side and apartheid ended. So we have an opportunity now. Because I'm mad, I don't have any good advice. But what I can tell you is that if you sit in your homes tonight instead of burning your home to the ground. You will have time to properly plot, plan, strategize, and organize and mobilize in an effective way. And two of the most effective ways is first taking your butt to the computer and making sure you fill out your census so that people know who you are and where you are. The next thing is making sure you exercise your political bully power and going to local elections and beating up the politicians that you don't like. You got a prosecutor sent your partner to jail and you know it was bullshit, put a new prosecutor in there. Now's your election to do it. You want a different senator that's more progressive, that promotes marijuana through, now is the time to do that. But it is not time to burn down your own home. I love and I respect you. I hate I don't have more to say. I hate I can't fix it in a snap. I hate Atlanta's not perfect for as good as we are. But we have to be better than this moment. We have to be better than burning down our own homes. Because if we lose Atlanta, what else we got? We lose an ability to plot, to plan, to strategize, to organize, and to properly mobilize. I want you to go home. I want you to talk to 10 of your friends. I want you guys to come up with real solutions. I would like for the Atlanta City Police Department to bring back the Community Review Board, one that Alice Johnson was formerly under Chief Turner. We need a review board here ahead of it before an officer does some stupid shit. We need to get ahead of it. That's my recommendation to my mayor and my chief. Let's get a review board. Let's get ahead of it, and let's give them power. We don't need an officer that makes a mistake once, twice, 3 times, and finally he kills a boy on national TV, and the next thing you know, the country is burning down. We don't need a dumbass president repeating what segregation has said. When you start looting, we start shooting. But the problem is some officers black and some people gonna shoot back. And that's not good for our community either. I love and respect you all. I hope that we find a way out of it because I don't have the answers, but I do know we must plot, we must plan, we must strategize, organize, and mobilize. Thank you for allowing me some time to speak. I'd like to appreciate our chief for what she said on YouTube. I thought it was very bold to do. I'd like to appreciate our mayor for talking to us like a black mama and telling us to take our ass at home. And I'd like to thank my friend for convincing me to come here. And I'll defer to Joe Beasley now because he knows a hell of a lot more than we do. Thank y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome speech. Beautiful work there by Killer Mike. Excellent stuff. Thanks to everybody for watching that. I really said it. So, Trump resign now is trending number 3 worldwide. Here's an agent provocateur in Las Vegas. Another white guy dressed in all black. They were tagging a window at a mall with a group of other white guys. So we do have these agent provocateurs everywhere. Let's keep an eye out for them tonight. If you're part of a protest, remember you can always go to the hardware store and buy zip ties. If you had some zip ties and you had an agent provocateur and you needed to hold him under a citizen's arrest until the police got there and maybe you filmed him the whole time, you know, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But let's see what else is going on. Oh, here's the guys, another shot of the people in Oakland. They are fake anarchists. They are just breaking things randomly. You can see Twitter, you're just terrible with the video. Like, let's randomly turn on the volume all the time. Like, I don't know who thought that was a good idea. But yes, here they are. And then that time you didn't do it. So let's inconsistently turn the volume off and on. That's a 5 guys, man. And see, now she right there is arguing with them, trying to get them to stop. See, that's the real protester right there. And then here's all these black flag anarchy people. They may or may not be agent provocateurs paid by the state, just smashing things up. These are restaurants. I mean, who cares? So, pretty crazy stuff right there in Oakland. Not sure what else to say. Donald Trump, you need to resign today. Trump, resign now. Christopher Franco writes, Trump has a literal hard-on right now at the thought of violence. This is another weather balloon for his call to action soon. Vicious dogs. Put the young ones on the front lines. They love it. Dude is salivating. fucking ghoul. And it is ghoulish. It's dark. It's not human. And it's happening tonight at the White House. It's MAGA night at the White House. So get ready. We'll see what's going to happen. Hope everyone's staying safe, staying inside, staying away from the virus. If you are going out like these protesters, wear a mask, protect other people, don't get them sick. Also, it's great because it breaks facial recognition. But yeah, that was some rough news today. It's a rough times that we're living in. It's MAGA night at the White House. I don't know. I just can't take it. We could do phone calls if you guys want. I don't know if there's a real demand for it. Let me look at the chat, see what's going on. We've been on for a little while now, so I'm not sure that you're looking to phone call. But if you want a phone call really briefly, we could give it a try. Call us at 1-518-600-1949 or on Skype at World Crypto Network, all one word. Let's see, we're trying to close the player. 8-600-1949. Looks like there's a little bit of action in the chat, but not that much. We'll try to give it a couple minutes, see if anyone wants to call in. Otherwise, that's about it for the day. I mean, I've seen enough reporters shot at in America, seen enough strange agent provocateurs with white armbands. Louisville, Kentucky, local news crew fired upon multiple times. And again, this whole group of people, these guys that just walk by right here, nothing's wrong. That guy just drew his weapon. He's discharging it at reporters directly at the camera. It's a slippery slope. You know, one day you're discharging your weapon against reporters, and the next day you're kneeling on an African American's neck until he dies, and the next day you're choking a guy out because he was selling loose cigarettes, and pretty soon you're shooting someone in the back as they attempt to walk away. It happens fast. You can see a religious statue maybe right there in the background, maybe a law bringer. Oh, you can't quite see it on the zoomed in version, but yeah, it's in a public square. And there he is, just comes right out from the line, ready to engage. The big danger that is a local reporter. Reload, troubleshooting. Aim it in, right into the lens. Aim for the lens. That's how cameras work. Everyone's just walking by. It's a normal day at the protest. Oh, what's Jeff doing? Ah, he's shooting at some of those reporters. Aren't those Americans? Aren't those members of the press, the Fourth Estate, protected in the Constitution? The only group mentioned in the Bill of Rights that's protected, the press. Turn and shoot. No doubt what I'm doing. Bang, bang, bang. I'm so big and strong. Almost got him in the lens. I'm going to scare that little girl reporter with her yellow vest, her face mask. Scare her away. Teach her not to report on police. Teach her not to do her job. She's got a big fuzzy microphone in her hand. She looks like a real threat. In America.
We got plenty of time here.
Are you okay?
I'm getting shot! I'm getting...
Katie, are you okay?
Rubber bullets! It's okay. It's those pepper bullets. It's those
Are
pepper
they...
bullets.
Who are they aiming that at?
Now he's shooting at the
At
photographer.
us! Like, directly at us! Directly
Why
at
are they
us!
doing that?
He's shooting at our crew.
I don't
Do they
know.
not know that obviously they see the camera? Are you okay?
Rubber bullets! It's okay. It's those pepper bullets. It's those
Are
pepper
they...
bullets.
Who are they aiming that at?
Now he's shooting at the photographer.
Us! Like, directly at us! Directly
Why
at
are they
us!
doing that?
He's shooting at our crew.
I don't
Do they
know.
not know that obviously they see the camera? back to the tier.
Obviously, they see the camera. So get ready tonight for MAGA night. The president has vicious dogs and ominous weapons. The most vicious, the most ominous that he has ever seen. And that's when people will be badly hurt, or worse. Many Secret Service agents are just waiting for action. We put the young ones on the front line, sir. They love it. The professionally managed so-called protesters at the White House had little to do with the memory of George Floyd. They were just there to cause trouble. Wrong there. The Secret Service handled them easily. Tonight, I understand, is MAGA night at the White House. So, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks to the donation we had to Tallycoin in the middle of the show. That was really cool. Quite a surprise. Haven't had a donation in a long time. So that was cool. I'm not going to bother showing the QR code or anything, but if you want to find it, it's out there. And, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm going to go watch the Purge movie or something. Get ready for MAGA night at the White House. I turned it on last night. I didn't want to see riots. I hoped it would cool down, and I think it did cool down. We didn't see any major fires last night. But now I think it's going to heat back up. It's Saturday night in America. He just gave everyone all day to drive to Washington, D.C. from wherever you live on the East Coast. So that was a great idea for both sides. Sarcastically, a great idea for both sides. So we'll see how that goes. I'll be watching the TV tonight, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it again tomorrow. So, happy weekend. The price of Bitcoin is up 1.12% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 9,535, a high of 9,612, and a low of 9,323. That's $1 for 10,484. Satoshis. Have a nice weekend. Bye.